Hey everybody, Derek here. I'm here to bring you another video for our Sons of Anarchy countdown to the final season. We are exactly 5 days away from the upcoming final season premiere. Getting closer, folks. I know that a lot of us are really excited to see what Kurt Sutter has in store for us. I really think it's going to be a great final season. An advanced preview, somebody who wrote an article said that it was probably going to be one of the best episodes of the series. I can believe it. You know, they have a lot of things that they can work with. Sutter has always come through for us, and I'm really excited to see what they have in store for us. But tonight, what I'm going to do is basically a character death predictions video. One of the things that we like to do is to see if we're good enough to guess at what direction Kurt Sutter is going to take the series. And he has promised that some of the cast members are going to die this season. Sons of Anarchy has always been about death. You know, there's been a lot of characters that have fallen since the start of the series, and Kurt Sutter has promised that there will be more to go. And I wanted to give my thoughts on that and just, weigh in on how I feel about some. I'm going to break this down a little bit, though, because if I do all the characters, then it's going to be like a 40-minute video, and you guys have better things to do than sit down and watch a 40-minute video. So, I'm just going to do in this video Jax and Gemma. Okay, and what I'm going to do is kind of do like what the Sons do when they discuss whether the person's going to meet Mr. Mayhem, as they call it, and basically give my pros and cons. Pro being maybe why the character should be killed off the series or why they might, or cons, why it would be better to keep them alive through the end of the series. So, just in case you're not caught up for some reason, there may be spoilers about this. I am going to be talking about various plot points for the series. So, if you're not caught up, this will contain spoilers, so I suggest you not watch it if you're not caught up. Okay. So, the first character, as I said, is going to be Jax, that I'm going to do my analysis on. And, Jax has always been a developing character. I mean, we've seen how he has changed a lot from the first season alone. I mean, the first, 3 seasons, we have a guy who wants to bring change to the club, who sees the error of Clay's ways, who's basically, he fights against him in the second season, and we really see that, he wants to change the club around. Now, we get to season 4, and he's just ready to leave it. He doesn't want anything more to do with it. And under circumstances that he can't avoid, he becomes the president of the club. And you see Jax has made a big transformation, and you kind of see him having Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde moments, is like what I like to refer to it as. Because, I mean, literally what you have is, or maybe this is a better way to put it, sometimes I feel like he has John Teller on one shoulder and Clay Morrow on another shoulder, kind of telling him what he should do. And I feel like Jax wouldn't have been as violent in the 5th season had it not been for Opie's death. I think that if Opie would still be alive, he would have set a lot of these things into motion sooner, trying to get the club out of guns. I think he would have moved a little bit quicker. But, you see him trying to do the right thing, trying to set things up and try to, make the club legitimate. And then other times you see Clay shine through. I mean, like, Jax going behind the club's back to put Clay in prison the way he did, to basically right away in the 6th season, you see him making deals with Augustus Marks, stuff like that behind the club's back. And of course he's going to bring it to the club, but nonetheless, you see him doing exactly what Clay did. What Jax did is technically no different than what Clay was doing. Maybe it's for a better purpose, perhaps, but nonetheless, maybe if Jax would have consulted some other club members like Chibs, Chibs being the VP, he's like, what, are you crazy offering Augustus Marks as the replacement? Because unfortunately there was racial tensions, between the IRA and anybody that was not, of the Caucasian race, unfortunately. And you see that Jax is doing the things that Clay's done, and then, I mean, going and stabbing Wendy in the arm with a drug needle was definitely one of the most shocking things I had ever seen on the show. I mean, you see Clay shining through right in that moment. It's like, what was the difference between Clay beating up Gemma for what she did and Jax, stabbing the drug needle into Wendy for what she did? I mean, really, there's not that much difference. And you see that Jax has changed. And what we've seen so far in the previews is that Jax has really lost his way at this point. I mean, Tara was like that one thing that was keeping him constant, that was keeping him, sane, keeping him on this path of, I'm going to set the club legitimate. That's what I'm going to do. And he set out to do that. And I think that part of the reason was because of Tara and his boys. Now that he's lost Tara, I think he's lost himself. And I honestly think that it could go either way, honestly. Some of the pros for killing Jax off would be, one, it may serve as the ultimate, push for the club to go legitimate. Who knows? Jax's death may end up being the thing that could, really make other people step up and lead by his example. Because, Jax, even near the end of the 6th season, he's really trying to get the club back to what his father wanted, which was going to save everybody. That's what Jax wants. And perhaps if Jax does die, then it might be what the rest of the club needs to step up and make those changes. In addition, what you also have is, for the pro, just sometimes, when you go down a revenge story, sometimes the hero, as you look at it, maybe the hero, does end up dying. And I think that it might epitomize a lot of the, we're going to die bloody concept. That's something that a lot of people have felt in the club. And, I think that if Jax were to die, then it would epitomize, this is what a club like that can do to you. And I mean, at this point, I think we're going to see a Jax that's kind of similar to season 5, because he's going to try to do whatever it takes to take, the people down that killed Tara. Now, will there be other plot lines involved? Probably, but we have yet to see that. But, there are just some indications that, ultimately what this season is going to be about is Jax getting revenge. So, again, they say when you set out for revenge, dig 2 graves. Well, that might, again, be another thing to, tie this concept in. Now, on the con side, one of the things that I have is, well, Kurt Sutter has been known for not necessarily killing off the main character and instead putting him in a position that may be worse. You take the Shield, for instance. Kurt Sutter worked on the Shield. And the Shield ended with Vic Mackey. Basically, he gets away with, all the bad things that he ever did on the show, but his family goes into witness protection, so he can't see them. So he loses his family. He loses, Danny, his lover. She ends up, not wanting anything to do with him. And he basically ends up turning in all of his friends, well, just his one friend, Ronnie, for him to take the fall, and Vic gets stuck behind a desk, which is something that he doesn't want to do. He's more of an out-in-the-field type guy. So there are worse things that can happen to Jax than death. And if you, I don't, and I always wonder, I don't know if we're going to have a happy ending for any of these characters. It's hard to say, or maybe not all of them, but some of them. And I think that maybe Jax might end up doing something so drastic that he may not be a part of the club anymore. Who knows? He might end up falling so far into what Clay does, he might do something that gets him excommunicated from the club. You never know. And if Jax doesn't have a club, and he doesn't have his wife, and who knows, maybe he just won't have his boys. I mean, it's hard to say. We're going to see what happens, but maybe doing that would serve as a, final nail in the coffin for Jax. That, hey, there are worse things that can happen. Another thing I could see is maybe there is some hope for an ending for Jax where he's still at the head of the table. And, it may end up flashing forward. You never know. Part of me wonders if maybe maybe there might be a flash forward right at the end of many years, and Jax is still at the head of the table, but he's, devolved into something like Clay. which would be the ultimate irony. Going down a path of vengeance can definitely leave you scarred. And I think that maybe if we see that Jax becomes more like Clay, then again, it's Jax losing that hope and the club just becomes something worse. That or Jax ends up in prison. I could see that as a possibility. I mean, Jax tries to do everything. Maybe he can set the club straight. Maybe he does get revenge, but he ends up going to prison for it. So he loses his club for sure. He loses his kids because they're not going to be able to see him. Maybe they don't want anything to do with him. And that's the end, for all the bad things that he may have done or that he may do in this season. I mean, we'll have to see. But there's definitely a lot of options, and I don't know which one I agree with because again, part of me, like I'm that kind of like guy who wants like a solid ending, but I don't think that we're going to necessarily get that with Sons of Anarchy. I think that it's going to be like an ending to the events here, but there's still going to be a future for this club. So we'll have to wait and see. But again, there's pros and cons for both sides, and we'll just have to wait and see. I'm going to move on to Gemma now. And Gemma is a little bit more complicating for me. Because the pros for killing her off is basically, well, it would be justice for her killing Tara. I mean, what else can you really do other than, kill her off for what she did? And that may end up happening. And it may not be Jax that kills her. Like, part of me thinks that it'd be interesting to see if Jax does find out that Tara did it. Excuse me, that Gemma did it. And him not being able to go through with the act. Because, I mean, I can't imagine someone trying to kill their mother. Especially like Jax, who's had a pretty close connection with his mother his whole life. I mean, that would not be easy. Finding out that your mother killed the woman that you love, was involved with killing your father. I mean, that might come out. And I mean, maybe just it's not something that Jax is going to be able to do. And another thing, I mean, maybe it's something that Gemma, it would be like the worst ending for her is to not kill her off. I mean, pretty much like the justification of like an eye for an eye, like Jax kills Gemma for killing Tara is pretty much the only pro. But I see a lot of things they can do with her instead of killing her off. Which, one, sometimes I doubt that Kurt Sutter actually will, because Kurt Sutter and Katie Seagal are married, and I could see maybe like Kurt Sutter wouldn't want to kill Gemma just because it's his wife. I mean, we don't know. We'll see. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I'm just saying that he might not be as willing to, go through that. I could see that as a possibility. Another thing is, again, kind of like Jax, taking things away from Gemma would just be a worse thing than death for her. I mean, if Jax is basically able to get the upper hand on her and kicks her out of the town, telling her never to come back, she loses her, all of her club members, those people that she looks as his family. She loses Tara, she loses Thomas and Abel. She loses her son. She loses Unser. I think, and Nero too. I think that would be even worse for Gemma. Going down and losing all of that. Then again, you also see maybe Gemma's going to end up on top. I think that a lot of the things with Sons is that, well, you always have to remember that these are not good guys. Sure, they may be better than other, crime syndicates, whatever you may, but these are not good guys. These are not your typical protagonists. They still do bad things. And again, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that, it's like not always, like the line's not so black and white when it comes to these characters. And who knows, somebody may end up getting away with everything. And that's the thing, is are these people going to end up in prison, or are they going to get away with everything that they've done? Because, Kurt Sutter and the other creators of The Shield basically almost had this, like, karma, what goes around comes around. Like the first episode when, Vic Mackey kills that cop, you knew that he was going to eventually go down for that. That was going to come back around. And the Sons have done some pretty terrible things to some people. And maybe that might come back around and bite them. It might. but it might not. Again, I think that some people are going to get away and other people are not with the things that they've done. And maybe Gemma might. Gemma might end up raising Thomas and Abel to be like Jax. So I could see that as a possibility too, that Gemma actually wins. It's possible. And she ends up raising Abel and Thomas to be the future vice president and president of Sons of Anarchy. That could happen. So I could see that as a possibility. It doesn't necessarily have to end bad for Gemma. We think it should, but it may not. It very well may not. So I'm very interested to see what they have. Again, it's really hard to say whether certain characters are going to get killed off or not. It's a lot harder, again, for Sons of Anarchy because, again, Sutter has such a connection with these characters. He's even said, honestly, that he doesn't know if he could kill off characters like Tig or Chibs or Bobby or Juice because they've been around for so long and they're so familiar. But that might mean that he won't do it until the very end. I mean, I don't know. But I'm going to do that video next. I'm going to give my thoughts on those characters. And again, I want to thank everybody that has been watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I have a lot more ideas. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them. Feel free to leave suggestions. I'm always open to new ideas for these videos. I want to thank everybody again, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.